My childhood home was haunted. I say was, but probably still is. Hi, I'm Meredith, and this is Rattled and Shook, and I'm going to tell you a true creepy story. This one was sent in by Cassandra. Thank you, Cassandra. I'm from a very small town up in northern Ontario, Canada. I'd say the population is about 4,000 to 4,500. We don't have any streetlights like the red, yellow, green kind. Only stop signs. We have a Tim Hortons, 2 grocery stores, a few schools, a few hairdressing shops, a golf course, and not much else. It's very quiet. My childhood home was haunted. I say was, but probably still is. It's an old house in the middle of town. I don't even know when it was built, but I know it's an older house. For me, I would say the activity started as early as when I was 6 to 8 years old. I remember being scared of the dark. My parents would never let me have a nightlight. I loved to sleep with my ceiling fan on too, but they would shut that off as well. So it was very dark and quiet in my room. My first experience happened when I was laying in my bed. My parents' room was across the hall from mine, diagonally. I woke up during the night, and I saw a lady in a red coat. It almost looked like a trench coat. She was carrying a briefcase, and she was coming out of my parents' room. She stopped in the doorway, just for a minute, to look back in their room, and then continued to walk into the kitchen. I thought to myself, I must be dreaming. I pulled the covers over my eyes and tried to go back to sleep. We had a really small backyard. Think of it like the size of a really small driveway. I remember digging in the backyard, doing things that usual young kids do, and I remember finding a silver skull ring with red ruby jeweled eyes. I remember thinking how spooky it was and wondering why it was in the dirt underground in my backyard. And then I wondered if it had anything to do with my house and the experiences I was starting to have. I spoke to my mom about this ring a few months ago, and she remembers it too. As I got older, things started to pick up, especially when I would be home alone after school. Now, it wasn't unusual for me to be home alone after school. My school, which was French Catholic, was literally down the road from my house. My dad worked at the grocery store and wouldn't be home until 4 to 5 p.m. My mom was a teacher at the English Catholic school, so she would be home around 4 p.m. with my brother, who also went to that same school. Therefore, I would be home alone for at least an hour every day. One of the biggest activities I remember is when I was home one day on the weekend and my parents went out grocery shopping. I had to go to work, or I had plans with friends. I don't exactly remember. But I do remember that I had to shower. Now, I never liked showering when there was no one home. It just gave me an icky feeling. I was always scared that someone would break in when I was showering. But that day, I had to do it for some reason. So I decided to jump in the shower quickly, and I locked the door behind me. Next thing I know, the door unlocks, and I hear someone walk in. A woman humming this eerie song. To this day, I haven't heard anything that sounds quite like it. I assumed it was my mom, as it wasn't unusual for my mom to unlock the door and walk in while I was showering or something. The hum was creepy, and it sounded like an old tune. That's the only way I can think to describe it. I didn't look through the shower door because, as I said, I already figured it was my mom. I rinsed out my hair, stopped the water, opened the shower door. They were sliding doors, and no one was there. I ran into the kitchen in my towel to look around, and I yelled out for someone, anyone. No one answered. No one was home. As I stood in the kitchen with my towel, I see my parents and my brother pull into the driveway with the car, coming back from grocery shopping. I waited until they came in, and then I asked if they were just in the house. They all looked at me like I was crazy, and confirmed that no, they were not, in fact, just in the house. They didn't ask why I was even asking, and I didn't tell them either. You see, my parents aren't really believers of the paranormal. The responses I would get were, "It's all in your head, you were dreaming, that doesn't exist, you watch too many scary movies," etc., etc. Another time, I was home from school, and again, by myself. I was sitting in my living room upstairs watching TV when I suddenly hear a bunch of plates crashing and breaking downstairs. Our downstairs wasn't finished at this time, and the floor was concrete, and it was cold and scary. Our washer and dryer were down there, but it was more of a storage area at the time. As soon as I heard those plates crashing, I ran out of my house. I'm thinking to myself, why would there be plates down there on the bottom floor, and how did they fall? I ran over to my neighbor's house, and I was yelling and screaming, asking for help, stating that there was somebody in the basement. Someone had to be in the basement. So my neighbor, Monique, came over to my house while I waited outside. She went into our basement and looked around. Eventually, she came back up and said to me that not only was there nobody in our basement, but there weren't any dishes on the ground or broken. There was no mess. Nothing fell. A lot of other activity happened when we redid our basement. My parents built 2 bedrooms down there, one for me and one for my brother. They also redid the laundry room. They made a bathroom down there with a shower and a little living room area. You hear sometimes that when there's spirits in a house, they don't like change or renovations. You usually have to ask for permission before doing anything. I doubt my parents ever did that. In my room downstairs, I experienced instances of activity usually when I was sleeping. I was woken up by activity. One night, I woke up to someone gently playing with my hair. I had instances of feeling like someone was sitting on the edge of my bed. You know, the feeling of when the mattress goes down as someone sits. Another time, I remember waking up and sitting up in my bed, and I was surrounded by blue lights all around me. It looked like aura. It was totally blue. I remember moving my arms and hands around and just seeing this blue light everywhere. It was honestly crazy. For some reason, I told my dad about it the next morning, though it was unusual of me to talk to my parents about these things. I didn't really feel like I could tell them this stuff without them thinking I was crazy. I knew they didn't really believe in it, but after I finished telling my dad about the blue lights, he goes, "That's funny, because I woke up in the middle of the night and I swore there was a man standing next to my bed, and his face was right up in my face. He just said it casually, like it was normal." That kind of threw me for a loop. Another night, I remember waking up and there was a lady beside my bed. It was an older lady. Again, I couldn't see her face, but I think that might have been a protective mechanism in my brain. Like I didn't want to see their faces. She was standing beside my bed in a white dress, and it had red and green little Christmas trees on it. And she just stood there. I blinked a few times, and then she disappeared. As I got older, I became more and more curious. I ended up buying a Ouija board after asking my mom so many times for one. She finally gave in. I remember my parents were gone for a weekend, so I invited a few girls over to sleep over and study for the upcoming exams. This was when I was in high school. We decided to play with the Ouija board. I remember asking the board for a sign. And then I remember the fire alarm gave out a loud beep and then shut off. It wasn't continuous, so it wasn't like the batteries were dying or anything. We were honestly so spooked after that. I remember another time playing with the Ouija board downstairs with my friend Krista. We were playing in the scary basement. We lit some candles, as we always did. While we were playing with the board, the candles went very dim, like the flame was very low to the wax. We were playing during a thunderstorm too. I remember that when we finally said goodbye to the spirit, the flame from the candles shot up and the flames were huge and then went back to normal. It was too creepy and bizarre to be a coincidence, truly. I have since moved out of that house, I moved 4 hours away to go to university, and I just stayed in the surrounding city after. And now, I keep my fan on at night, pretty much all the time. And when I can, somewhere, I keep a light on too.